And UBS Chief Economist Drew Matus. Drew, is the market telling us that there is a recession that's on the horizon?
No, the market's responding to events, and the market contains a lot of sentiment. If you look at the real economic data that's been out, actually some of it's been improving, particularly actually with regard to our trade with other countries. Export numbers and some of the surveys have been up, and it seemed like we were coming actually out of a period of weakness. And then, of course, we got the worries from overseas now impacting markets.
But does sentiment change? And, Drew, because, again, if individuals in this country, I know gasoline prices are much lower, service sector reports have been at least holding in there. But if they watch what's going on and they get nervous, that could, if sentiment changes and they really pull back and retrench, that could cause a downturn in the economy, could it not?
It could, but most Americans aren't as directly exposed to equities as we all would like to believe. Because we're in the industry, we think everyone kind of has individual stock holdings and does all this. Most people check their statements once a quarter. And so, after March 31st and people get their statements and they see that there might have been some weakness in Q1, depending on how markets evolve the rest of the quarter, then I think you'd have to worry about it. But at least for now, this is really a concern of Wall Street rather than Main Street.
Right, but Keith, yesterday afternoon, 4 o'clock, I saw network news anchors breaking in, doing like short live coverage of the stock market.
I mean, what you're pointing to, and George Soros made this point yesterday, is more about the reflexivity of it all. In other words, things feed on themselves. But my question to Drew, it's more about what you said, actually, which is real people. Exports, as you know, which you mentioned, are down 8 of the last 10 months. Manufacturing's in a recession. Industrial growth is in a recession. Farmers around the world, and in the U.S. for that matter, which are not Wall Street, are in a depression right now from a pricing perspective. Do you see any of that when you say that there's really nothing to worry about from a recession perspective?
Well, I think you have to look at what is going right, though, right? Later today we're going to see some decent job growth. People are experiencing income gains. No one's getting laid off, right? That's what we know from the initial claims numbers, is that if you have your job, you can keep your job. And so therefore, there's a lot of consumer spending going through the pipeline. And we can kind of debate about what they're choosing to spend their money on, but they're spending a lot less of it on gasoline now. And we haven't yet seen the full effects of people not having to divert resources to spending on gasoline. So I think the U.S. consumer's in good shape. With no one being laid off, that also means good things for the housing market. And while we do have areas of weakness in the economy, manufacturing, I wouldn't call it in a recession. I'd say it's more treading water instead of drowning. But it's certainly not moving ahead at a great pace. But that is an improvement from where it was 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah, when I say recession, I qualify it the way that everybody does, which is on a year-over-year basis, it's negative.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the manufacturing job sector, last year we only saw 17,000 jobs created in manufacturing for all of 2015. And I don't expect that we're going to see a big number with manufacturing today. So I agree with you, Drew, that, it has been kind of treading water. I don't think we're going to see it come back. We've truly moved to a service-based economy, and unless something drastically changes, we're not going to see those manufacturing jobs come back into the U.S. economy.
Joanie, where is there strength in terms of the pockets of job growth? Where is there really serious strength? Like, give me the best news that you have.
Well, the biggest growth, even if it's good to kind of recap 2015 and look at, the biggest sector was the professional and business service sector, had over 500,000 jobs. So those are more of the IT jobs, professional jobs. Healthcare, though, was one of the top sectors last year. Registered nurses, physician assistants, some of the top jobs still today. Probably the #1 job posting in America right now is a registered nurse.
Really?
So it's, that healthcare sector is very strong. Trade and transportation has done well. Leisure and hospitality has done well. And retail has done well, though we are going to see, some changes still due to e-commerce. I mean, we heard Macy's, obviously, is restructuring and announced 4,000 layoffs. So we will see some layoffs probably in retail, but those are probably the strongest sectors.
Hey, Drew, I want you to answer a big picture question, something I've been thinking about in the last couple of weeks. Because people talk about the growth in the services sector, particularly healthcare, and this has been a trend for literally decades, but really picking up steam. But because of that, you have an economy that's increasingly dependent on the government, on Medicare and on health care management. And so it can become this vicious cycle. If you have more people working in health care, they have wage gains, but again, that you have no reluctance to put in any kind of price controls by a government that's essentially running a large chunk of the health care system.
Well, I mean, that's certainly the case. I mean, if you look at the areas that aren't really dependent on government or not subject to insurance, eye care, for example, there's a reason the cost of eye surgery, LASIK, has gone down so significantly. It's because people have to pay for it themselves. And so, you know, all these high deductible health care plans that you hear about, those are attempts to get people to have to pay for more of their health insurance out of pocket so that they understand the cost decisions that they're making. And I know, you know, they might not be popular. I've got one, and I can't say I love it. But it does get me thinking about how much I'm spending on it. And, you know, the one thing to bear in mind, though, is we have an older population, and we pretty much are a country that has very few wants that aren't met. So one of the things that we can focus on is actually staying alive longer. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see healthcare spending in the U.S. so high, is because people choose to spend a lot of money on staying alive.
No, and well, the government's spending it too. I mean, it's not it's Medicare. Medicare
oh, yes,
makes
I mean,
that
but
decision.
they elect people who reinforce that idea, right? So in a wealthy country with very few wants, people have a good standard of living. The only thing that's missing, then, you have the standard, you just want to keep on living.
I thank you for doing that deep dive with me, because I've been thinking about it all week. But